be or not to be? That is the question. Whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles and by opposing end.
Dim, some heavy, heavy words. And I'm not even sure we get a chance to decide whether to be or not to be. I'm not sure killing ourselves ends our existence. But that's over our heads. One thing I do know is we get some say in how to be. And I don't know about you, but I want to be courageous. I want to be alive. I want to be joyful. Well, enough philosophy. Today, the infinitives. These are the to-be verbs. So, for example, to run, right? Or to laugh, ha ha ha. Or to dance. I know, pretty smooth, right? The to-be verbs, you get it. Now, infinitives are verbal nouns. They act just like nouns in a sentence. For example, to learn Greek is a lofty goal. Do you see how in that sentence, to learn is acting like the subject of the sentence? Or I might say, we deeply desire to ascend Mount Greek. Now, to ascend there is acting like the object of desire. We deeply desire to ascend Mount Greek. So, infinitives are verbal nouns. Now, as we have seen, once you get out of the indicative mood, everything else sort of loses a sense of time. The same is true for the infinitive. Now, the infinitive is not a mood. Technically, it's a part of speech. But the infinitive really doesn't have anything to do with time, only aspect. Now, as we've been going along, we've seen that Greek has three primary aspects, which are captured by three Greek tenses. And so I'll bet you can almost guess right now what the three tenses will be for the infinitive. Present, continuous aspect, right? Aorist for undefined aspect, and perfect for perfected aspect. So present, aorist, and perfect infinitives. That's all. No future infinitives, no imperfect infinitives, present, aorist, and future only. Now, one thing that's interesting is that this aspect is often hard to capture in English translation. For example, if I say, I want to ascend Mount Greek. If I say that in English, it just is undefined. But in Greek, if I say that, for example, in the present tense, if I say, I want to ascend Mount Greek, present tense, ongoing aspect, I'm talking about a journey. I'm talking about an ongoing thing, okay? If I say it aorist, I want to ascend Mount Greek, well, that's sort of like English. It's undefined. If I put it in the perfect tense, I would probably translate it this way. I want to have ascended Mount Greek. I want something that would have happened with aspect that continues on, okay? And again, that's hard to capture in English. So aspect, Greek aspect, is one of those great things about the Greek verb that we really need to pay attention to the nuances of. Again, what are the three tenses of the Greek infinitive? Present, aorist, and perfect. Greek infinitives are actually very easy to figure out because there aren't very many of them. We lose something that creates a lot of hassle in the indicative, which is person and number. Yay! Greek infinitives don't have person and number. There's no I, you, he, she, it involved with infinitives, right? They're infinite in their possibilities. To run, what's the subject? There is no subject. It's just a concept. To run, okay? So no person and number. That means when we go to parse a Greek infinitive, all we have to identify is the tense and the voice. And we'll see there are only a few endings to get used to. In fact, we'll learn some tricks to see that a verb is an infinitive that are really easy to spot. And when it comes to identifying the tense, the clues that we have already learned will continue to apply. It's worth reviewing them again. How do you know if a verb is in the present tense? We look at it, and it's the one we learned in the dictionary, right? The clue is there is no clue. Present tense stem, that's a present tense verb. How do we know a verb is in the aorist? Well, we remember that the first aorist, our clue is sigma alphas, and in the passive theta etas. And then we have these annoying second aorists where we see a stem change. And then for the perfect, what were the clues? Reduplication, kappas, and then remember in the middle passive we have no connecting vowel. So these clues are the clues that continue to apply actually all the way through the Greek verbals. So that's why it's so important to learn them. Once you learn to see these patterns, man, it's as easy as falling off a log. Now, in most cases, Greek infinitives will behave just like English infinitives, and when that happens, they are easy to translate. Yeah! But there are other times when Greek infinitives can be used idiomatically. What does that mean? Well, an idiom is sort of a roundabout way of saying something that has to be explained. For example, we were just talking about you. Are your ears burning? Are your ears burning? That doesn't make any sense at all. So what do I mean by that? Are your ears burning? I mean, did you have a sense of it? Did you have an intuition that we were talking about you? It's just one of those things that we say in English that really has to be understood at a deeper level and explained. Okay, well, the Greek infinitives with prepositions tend to be used this way. They're used in a way that has to be explained. In other words, you'll see this construction in Greek, and you'll try to translate it directly, and it won't make any sense at all. What you have to do is recognize the idiom, and then go away, see you, and then come back and say, okay, I've been to Greece, and I see what they meant by that. Now let me explain it in English. In other words, you have to recognize the idiom, and then just put it into English. There's no direct path from here to there. It's an idiom. So you'll see that as we get into them. These are semi-common in the New Testament. Thankfully, John doesn't use very many of them, but as the more complicated Greek starts to be used, as we get into Paul and Hebrews and Luke and Acts, we'll see that this is very common actually in Koine Greek.
Ah, what a glorious little chart here. And you will find this table in the middle of your master chart on the bottom right-hand corner. This is all of the infinitives. This is all the endings. Isn't it great? No giant trees. It's just, this is it. Okay? And as you will see, they're pretty easy to recognize just right off the bat. Notice that every one of them ends in I, except for the present active and the second aorist active. So there's a clue right there. If you see I, you're probably looking at an infinitive or ein. Okay? And then notice some other clues that we've come to recognize. Hopefully you would see these things like the aorist. See the sigma alpha there? And the aorist passive, theta eta. In the second aorist, what's this thing right here? Stem change, right? It comes from lambano, became lob. Okay? And then notice in the passives we have the esthais, thenai, esthai. For some reason, I always think of sigma, theta, as sort of a passive sign, and it tends to be stha. So, omai, eatai, amatha, estha, antai. So anyway, and then in the perfect, see the kappas there, and the reduplication, and in the middle passive, we're used to the reduplication, and then no connecting vowel. No asthai or esthai, just sthai, attacked right on the end with no connecting vowel. So that's our clue for the perfect middle passive. Okay, so these really follow the rules. Let's look at them sort of a row at a time. Present tense. What do we expect? We expect lexical form for the stem, so there it is. Here we have the ending ein for the active and esthai for the middle passive. Okay. For the aorist, we expect an augment, but there's no augment. What's going on? Oh, you know what's going on. We don't need an augment because the infinitive does not have anything to do with time. So there's no augment, okay? So it's the de-augmented aorist tense stem here, which in this case looks just like the present, but we do have our sigma alphas here, right? Or in the aorist passive, theta eta. And then the endings are I, right? Okay. And then in the second aorist, notice that the ending is just exactly like the present, except for one thing here that's different, which is the stem change. Okay? And then in the perfect, we have our reduplications, kappa in the active, so it's kenai. And in the passive, we have reduplication and no connecting vowel. So lelusthai. So those are the forms. They're really pretty easy to recognize. To the wild, to the wild. Let's see some of these infinitives out in the jungle where they belong. Okay, look at one right here in John 1:33. Kago uk edain auton. Now wait a minute. Edain looks like an infinitive. It's not. It's actually a pluperfect. A plu what? A pluperfect. There is one more tense that's very rarely used in the New Testament called the pluperfect, but let's not worry about that right now. Okay, that's for next semester. Okay, and I wasn't knowing him, auton. All ha pimsas me, the one sending me, baptizain in hudati, to baptize in water. Now you see it there, right? Baptizain, to baptize. It's an infinitive. Do you see the ending there? Does it jump out at you? Does it scream at you? What kind of infinitive are we looking at here? Remember, when you see an infinitive, it's really easy. It's going to be present, aorist, or perfect, and then you just need to know the voice. So it's tense and voice, and that's it. So what tense is this? Baptizain. Well, it's either, with this ain ending, it either will be present or it's a second aorist. Has this stem changed at all? Remember, the lexical form would be baptizo. No, it has not. So this is clearly a present, and it's active. Ain is the ending, so it's a present active imperative. It means to baptize. And you might notice here that because it's present, the one sending me to baptize, to keep on baptizing. So it's not just undefined, it's actually continuous aspect, which is really awkward and hard to capture in English. This was so easy. Let's do another one. Here we are in verse 43. Te epaurion, on the morrow, a thelasen. Now I'll tell you that this verb is from thelo, which means I wish. So we have an augment here, and we have sigma epsilon nun. Now remember, in the third person singular, we don't have sigma alpha in the aorist, we have sigma epsilon. So this is just an aorist active indicative third person singular. On the morrow, he wished, here's our infinitive, exelthein, to come. Astein Galilean, into Galilee. Okay, well, what kind of an infinitive are we looking at here? Well, with an ending of ain, it's either a present active or a second aorist. So the question is, has there been a stem change? Exelthein, does that look like anything you memorized or know? No. Well, unless you memorized your second aorist. Let me pop the principal parts chart over here and show you. Exerchomai becomes ex-aelphon. And we're used to this. This is just such an important verb to know. Erchomai becomes aelphon. Get used to that one. That's a really important second aorist. So this is indeed a second aorist. But wait a minute, you're saying. How come this is not an eta? Shouldn't it be ex-aelphane? And the answer is that this is the de-augmented aorist tense stem. So the vowel went from a longer to a shorter vowel, just to show you, make very clear, we're not talking about past time here. Ex-elthane, to come. This is a second aorist active infinitive. On the morrow, he wished to come into Galilee. On to verse 46. Kai epen auto Nathanael. And he said to him, Nathaniel, in other words, Nathaniel said to him, Ek Nazaret dunatai te agathon enai. Out of Nazareth, dunatai, remember from dunamai. Dunamai is deponent, remember that? Dunamai, so dunamai, dune, dun, etai, he, she, or it is able. So in this case, it is able. Out of Nazareth, is it able? Is it possible? Te, remember this indefinite pronoun? Something, anything. Out of Nazareth, is it possible anything good, agathon, enai, to be. Now that's just plain to be, like the most basic form of to be there is. This is the ami, I am, type form of to be. So it's worth looking at this. Notice that the infinitive form of ami is ani, and you will see that a certain amount. Notice how all the others have person and number, but the infinitive, no person and number. So see how easy? Ani just means to be. So let's get that out of the way. So nice and easy. Ek Nazaret, dunatai, te agathan ani. Down here in verse 48, things get a bit more interesting here. Please notice this phrase right here. Pra tu se philippon phanesai. Just those words. Pra tu se philippon phanesai. Nearly impossible to translate. Can you see that? Before of you, Philip to call. What in the world? Well, this is one of those idiomatic ones. Do you remember pra plus the genitive here? Pra and the article to. So here we have pra to, which translated means before. Okay? And here is the subject, before Philip. And remember, the subject we are used to being in the nominative case, but here it's in the accusative. And that's just one of the quirks of this idiom. And that's why this phrase is translated, before Philip called you, which is really strange to us, but again, that's idiomatic. So, pra tu means before. Pra tu, that in other words, with the infinitive, means before. One more here in John chapter 1, and I saved it for you because I thought this was sort of tricky too. Not too bad, but let's look at this phrase right here. He gave to them authority, children of God, to become. Let's read it in Greek together. Edoken, autois, exousian, tekna, theou, gen esthai. Okay, well, edoken, just to make sure we're getting those down, do you recognize the stem there? And give, do you remember didomi? It's one of the me verbs, didomi. So didomi becomes edoken. In this case, it's edoka, edokas, edoken. This is one of the kappa aorists. So anyway, so that's just an aorist form of a me verb here. He gave, autois means to them, exousian, authority, tekna theou, children of God. And I hope you recognize that ending by now, just like falling off a log again, right? Genitive, right? Children of God, and then here is our infinitive. Okay, gen esthai. What's going on with this one? Well, let's look at the ending here. We have esthai. What are the possibilities? Well, again, we're looking at either a present infinitive, esthai here, or a second aorist infinitive, esthai. Any guesses? Do you remember any word that you learned like geno or something like that? You had genao, but this is gen-eh. So what's going on with this one? Well, this is another really pretty common verb. So let me see. It's from genomai here. Let's take a look at this. Genomai in the aorist becomes gen main. Notice this is multicolored because it is not only a second aorist, the stem changed, but it's also in the middle voice here, amen. So it's deponent too. Is what a pain in the neck, but there you go. Again, amen. So look what happened here. Again, where's the epsilon? How come it's not again esthai? De-augmented, right? So again became just gen and then esthai. So you don't have to maybe remember all that junk, but you do need to be able to see that there was a stem change and be familiar enough with the verb genomai that you can recognize this gen as the root so that you know it has to do with to I am or I become. So in this case, because it's infinitive, it's a second aorist Active infinitive, it means to become. Edaken autois exousian tekna theou genesthai. He gave to them authority, children of God, to become.
So, to climb Mount Greek or not to climb Mount Greek? We will ascend Mount Greek. We will see the view from the lofty summit. It is well worth the view to climb Mount Greek.